Welcome to Sucio Talk. This is episode. All right, here we go with the episode numbers. That's the last time that I'm gonna mention the episode number in the episode because I always fuck it up. All right, and I'm sitting here with a very highly regarded chef, and I don't want to embarrass myself on this show. Okay, so this is episode Chef Christopher Kostow, my chef, your chef. And today we're going to talk about his career and sort of leading up to, as some of you may have heard, my exodus from the Charter Oak. But we'll get to that a little later. You know, here at Sucio Talk, we like to take things all the way back. In Chef's case, it's about 80 years. So here we go. Chef, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for being on Sucio Talk. A lot of people ask me to have you on, so... You know, finally
it's a lot of pressure.
Making some dreams come true. So it's all good. So where are you from?
Wow. I am born and raised in Highland Park, Illinois.
Illinois?
It's a suburb north of Chicago, about half hour north of Chicago.
Very cool. And how long did your parents live there before you arrived?
Great question. Maybe a decade.
Okay.
They lived in Chicago. I moved to the suburbs at some point and had my older brother and then me and then my little brother.
Heard that. Yeah. Where did they live before?
My mom was born in the Bronx. My dad was born in Europe after the war. So they were, a bit of the American dream. I mean, sort of bootstrapped it to a great degree. And my father was an attorney. My mother was a school teacher. They moved from Chicago to the suburbs for like everyone else, like some degree of a better life or whatnot. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah. And then, how was life growing up in the Kostow household?
Life growing up,
Were you a food family?
We're bringing it back.
Were you cooking? Were you guys going out to eat?
I would say we were a family that ate out a lot.
All right.
I tend to have very, and we've probably talked about this over the many years. And I have very distinct food memories. I think that's something I've been able to use over the years. So I remember very well what I ate. Whether or not the quality was good or not is sort of inconsequential. But we were always, we'd go up to Milwaukee to eat German food. We'd go into Chinatown to eat dim sum when no one was doing that. Food was always a big part of what we did. I didn't necessarily learn to cook from my mother by any stretch of the imagination, but food was always pretty central. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Did your parents cook at all? Was there some?
My mother cooked. She cooked. She had like most suburban mothers had like 6 things.
I heard that.
She did not particularly well.
Awesome. Yeah. Man, dogging the mom on the podcast.
Well, because I know she's not going to listen to the podcast. I don't think she knows.
It's kind of offensive.
I don't mean this podcast. I mean like podcasts.
Podcasts in general.
Yeah, nothing.
All right. Well, she's from the Bronx. I don't know.
Yeah.
She might be into that.
Maybe.
So you're growing up, and then what was your first job?
My first job ever, I think, was probably caddying at a country club.
Okay. How'd you get into that? Just sort of, I need a job?
Yeah, I need a job.
Did you like golf?
No, not at all. And I remember being about 85 pounds and trying to carry these people's bags, and it was miserable.
It's so weird because I watched that movie, Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
Oh, that's a caddy right there.
That wasn't me.
I
didn't have like a yardage book and stuff. No. That was not me.
All right. How long did you do that for?
I think I did that for like a summer. I think that was my first job.
Did you get into any trouble?
Yeah, because I never showed up. I mean, I can't remember how old I was at the time, but I remember I was old enough to not care about caddying.
Yeah.
And I remember there was like a tournament where like you got partnered with some old dude who you were his caddy for those 4 days. And I didn't understand how it worked. So day 2, I just didn't show up, and this dude's like sitting at the first tee, like, I can't place that on my caddy.
That's so funny.
Call me, wake me out of bed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Back in the day when there was only home phones, so thank God you were home sleeping.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
You were doing the right thing. So then after that, what'd you do?
I coached hockey. I remember in the summer times. I mean, you got to understand, I'm old, so this is like I got to think back.
What year is this?
Oh Jesus, this is probably 1990.
1990.
I'm 14. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
got you.
Yeah.
I had just moved to the States in '89.
Yeah, so
you were like 94. I was born in '89.
Yeah, so I was working when you were born.
When I was born.
Yeah, let that sink in.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you become a caddy, and then Is there any? Are you doing sports at this time in high school?
I was always playing hockey.
Okay,
hockey was always my
got
sport.
you. Even from a young age.
From a young age, like 4 or 5. Yeah.
Got you. Is it something that you thought that you were going to play professionally at some point?
I think everybody when they're 12 years old
for
thinks
sure.
they're going to be a pro hockey player or a pro athlete. I played up through prep school. I did not play college. I probably could have played at some places, but I think at that point there was other interests beyond hockey.
For sure, I could see that. Yeah, the ladies start rolling in.
Yeah,
you're like,
now I'm wondering if my mom is going to listen to this.
Drugs, rock and roll. It's okay. It's okay. It happens. What kind of music were you listening to at that time?
Holy shit! I was one of those 14-year-old Jewish kids from the suburbs who was sure that if Chuck D could just spend a few minutes with me, he would know that I get it. You know what I'm saying? like I'm listening to very political hip hop.
Yeah,
that's I'm listening to Boogie Down Productions and Public Enemy and stuff like that.
That's very cool. Was it you and your friends listening to that, or were you like?
I was always, maybe I always kind of did things my own way.
Yeah.
So I don't think we were rolling around a crew with like Kid and Play haircuts or anything.
With the headphones.
yeah.
Up to your head,
the
like radios.
Radio Raheem.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I think that was just my thing for some reason.
All right.
Yeah.
So you coached a little bit, and then after that, what'd you do?
I think the job. There's a music festival near where I grew up called Ravinia, which is they have like I don't want to say B-level acts, but like the Ringo Starr All-Star Band and like like whatever those
cover bands.
Yeah, it was like
Bad Fish plays there.
Yeah, or it's like probably a stop on the same tour of the bands who go to like the casinos. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
But like a little nicer.
Rod Stewart.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure Rod Stewart played. So that's like also the summer home of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. So like there's a bunch of restaurants that ring this pavilion or this area, and it was operated by the Levy Restaurant Group, which owns a lot of restaurants in Chicago. So I took a summer job like most kids did at one of these little restaurants, and I worked the cash register at a restaurant called the Counterpoint Restaurant, and I had like a little plastic visor and a name tag and like the manual it's called WOCAT, winning one customer at a time. It's very corporate like.
Wow.
But the dudes in the kitchen were wearing whatever they wanted, and they were getting high, and they were taking all the leftover bagged wine and driving around on stolen golf carts and just having the time of their life. I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And that's when I started cooking.
Gotcha.
So I said, let me transfer back in the kitchen, and I've been cooking ever since. And I don't think I was driving yet, so it was probably 15.
Yeah. It's been my experience that if you haven't had a food upbringing with like your parents actively teaching you how to cook, the lifestyle is what draws you into the kitchen more so than the cooking.
Yeah,
so it's like for me, it's the same thing. It's like, well, those guys are listening to rock and roll and they're high and they're fucking and they're swearing and it's crazy in there, and that's where I want to be.
For sure.
At this point, is there like a chef there at this place where you're cooking at, or
there
is it just like
there was like I think in retrospect that the chefs that they put in charge of these things were probably those in the lowest rung of the Levy restaurant hierarchy.
Gotcha.
Or like, hey, why don't you go oversee a bunch of high school kids or junior high kids for a summer?
Like, yeah, whatever.
They're the worst.
They're probably getting high too.
There was a chef, the head chef. His name was Brian Good. They called him Shaky the Clown because he had some sort of, I don't think he was epileptic. I think he just was like maybe a drinker, and he was these guys were dirtbags. Like if the female cooks or the female staff would be like, hey, I need a key to the walk-in, he'd make them go in his pocket. I mean, bad, like not good people, good people. And but I really got into cooking. I mean, I really loved it, and I was really young. And the guys, like the grown men who are working at like the real restaurant on this massive charcoal grill, and I mean, in retrospect, I'm sure it's the worst restaurant in the world. But I'm sure it's like rosettes of butter and ice water sort of thing. Kind of restaurant. They would let me come and like work service with them. I think they just thought it was funny that this little kid wanted to cook. And I would work this massive grill, and it was like the hottest thing. It was like it was unbelievable. And I would get high with them in the walk-in with the older guys. And it was an incredible experience. I loved it.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, how was the weed back then?
Stems and sticks and
was popping.
It was
popping noises in the joints.
It was you smoke it and you go take a nap.
Let alone fucking go cook a service.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So at this point, you like cooking and you're like, I'm gonna do this. Are you like?
I think, and I've thought about this quite a bit and talked about this a bit. At the time, there was no perception that was a reasonable profession. I was playing hockey. I fancied myself. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to do all these things. I looked at these chefs who are the only sort of visible role models within that industry. I'm like, I don't want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
It was only kind of around that time, maybe a couple of years later, that I remember first seeing, I don't know if it was on TV or something, these like young chefs in New York. I can't remember what the show was, but it was and I'm like, wow, these are like young, articulate, good looking, like creative, dynamic people. I mean, you could, like, being a chef is actually like a thing you could go be.
Yeah.
But I remember the first couple of years I did that, I was taking summer classes at like the community college. I was in high school at the time. I was taking like creative writing classes, and I just totally I stopped going to class. I just wanted to fry chicken because that's what we did at this restaurant. Yeah. And I was just I remember writing schematics of the kitchen and how the flow of service should go and all this stuff. And I remember I quit one time because the corporate people came in. There was like some 15-year-old kid just making his own fucking fried chicken recipe up, and they're like, no, it's Hidden Valley Ranch powder and flour.
Yeah.
They're like, make the chicken the way we want you to. And I was like, I'm out of here.
I'm taking a stand.
I'm done.
Taking a stand. That's awesome. So you left there. Where do you go?
At some point, I mean, these were all summer jobs.
Yeah.
So
and you're still in high school.
Yeah.
So upon graduation, sort of where do you go?
Upon graduation from high school, I went to college.
And you had no choice there. Your parents were like, "You're going to college."
I think. Yes, the right answer is yes. I had no choice.
In case mom's listening.
Yeah, I had no choice. I think at some point I may have tried to float the idea of taking a year off. I don't know what that meant, and I don't know that I had the maturity necessary to really do that.
To do it.
Yeah, but I think that was the intention. But I always came back and still had those same summer jobs. I actually had a cooking job in college too to make some extra money.
Where'd you go to college?
Hamilton College in New York.
Hamilton College in New York.
So I worked at the Adirondack Roasting Company, which is like a typical small town like sandwiches and with sprouts on them.
Yeah.
That sort of jam.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And then your major was?
It was a concentration in philosophy. So it was a liberal arts school. So you didn't have pure majors; you had concentrations of stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. And at that point, you're still just like daydreaming about cooking?
Yeah, it was interesting. The more money that went into the education and the more time that went into it, the more I was thinking seriously about cooking.
Yeah, I hear you.
Probably going to save my parents a fortune if I just made that decision earlier. But,
and Hamilton College in New York. Now, when did you make a move?
Upon sort of senior year, when you have to start figuring out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And I was, again, still cooking in the summer times, and as I said, cooking at school.
Yeah.
I think the intention was just to see if, as a profession, this made sense. I moved to San Diego, which was not a culinary mecca, and I don't know that it is even now. But I moved with some friends. We got a place on the beach. I was the only one who knew kind of what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think we had 6 people living in a 3-bedroom, 2 people living in the garage sort of thing on over by Wind and Sea in La Jolla. And I fortunately landed with like a really good chef. Trey Fauché at George's at the Cove, who I spent many years with. Mm-hmm. And that was really my entree into like real restaurants.
Yeah.
I remember the first time we walked into that kitchen as a pretty dumb, naive kid, just being amazed by it was it was the first time I'd seen all cast iron. It just felt so substantive and professional.
It's big.
Yeah. The guys online, one was like a 40-year-old Marine, and Alejandro was like the sauté guy, had been there 25 years. This was a very and I still believe that those are more formative. Those experiences are more formative than spending a summer at Mugaritz. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You learn how to cook. You learn how to interface with different people. And to me, that's where the beauty of the industry lies, more than the cleverness inherent in a Mugaritz. Mm-hmm. It's like the bringing together of different diverse people and working towards a cause and the fun that goes along with that. That's still what I enjoy of the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. And then now, did you go to that restaurant kind of knowing that you wanted to work there because it was a better restaurant, or because you wanted to work for the chef?
I remember I took a job. I skipped this. I took a job at a place called Terra in Hillcrest in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And the chef was 23, had no idea what he was doing, but he was super cool, and he let me kind of play a little bit. So I was there for 6 months.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in his office looking at a Food and Wine magazine, and there was an ad on the last page that said, George's at the Cove welcomes Food and Wine Best New Chef winner Trey Fauché.
Gotcha.
So he had just won Food and Wine Best New Chef because he'd previously been at Sundance. And I literally remember looking at it. I'm in the chef's office. I pick up the phone and call to talk to Trey. He never called me back. No one ever called me back. So I just went there day after day and sat at the hostess stand. There's this lovely hostess named Moira who would just like tolerate me, and eventually Trey agreed to see me, and I got a job.
Cool. What was your first position there?
I was both pastry plater. It's a weird combination. I plated the pastries and I shucked oysters. And I remember to this day the drawer with 3 third pans of different ice creams and sorbets in it. That invariably oyster shells would fall into. It was just a terribly designed station.
It's like, all right, I'm on the ice cream and oyster station.
Ice cream and oysters. So you do these chocolate souffle cakes, and you would do these pastries like creme brulee Napoleons with I don't know if you ever seen like the layered phyllo, and all that sort of jazz, and then oysters for some reason.
Okay. And then, do you know then in your heart that like I'm gonna move up in this kitchen and I'm gonna be like aggressive in my upbringing? I
would say that I was voracious in my quest for knowledge. I didn't go to culinary school, and I sort of always had that.
Do you feel a little behind?
I always
kind
felt
of.
Behind. I feel behind all the time.
Me too.
So what I would do is I'd like go to the library in La Jolla before work, and I'd read whatever I could. But I'd also go to the bookstore in La Jolla, buy a book, take it to work and photocopy it all, and then return the book and get another book because I couldn't afford to buy a bunch of books.
Hell yeah!
So I learned to cook a lot that way. Trey really gave me a lot of ability to do specials and stuff. I can remember the first specials I ever did. I remember I did. He still gives me a hard time about I did this beet soup. It was like a red beet soup with a horseradish whipped cream or something. Something like that, which I'm sure was probably tasted okay, but I remember it spilled on the carpet and some guest got it on them. I remember it was it was an issue. But I'll tell you, the honest to God truth is for the first several years of my career, I always was this isn't for me. Not that I didn't love cooking, but the trajectory of a cook it's a tough path.
Oh, for sure.
And I was a little older than some because I didn't really start at it until after college, really. And I was always you encounter a lot of people you don't like. Yep. I worked with some chefs who I really, as human beings, in their souls, I did not like. Mm-hmm. And you just start asking yourself, not to skip too far ahead, but I worked for someone in San Francisco where I remember making, I don't know, $8 an hour, living in San Francisco, not having enough money at any one time to go shopping. I could buy one thing or 2 things, but I couldn't I never had enough of anything. Yeah. And I remember just being maybe I'm just done. So the first several years of cooking, I genuinely wasn't sure if it was for me.
It's almost like the boot camp, the true test. Are you willing to do this? Yeah. Because I had a lot of those times when I was thinking about doing this podcast, I was thinking about the questions I was going to ask you, and I'm like, I got to ask him if he ever felt like this is not for me.
I quit cooking at one point. Completely quit cooking for over a year. Okay,
got you. I heard that. Yeah. So you're cooking at George's, and then what station do you go to after oysters and ice cream?
So I'm doing oysters and pastries. I think I get on garde manger, hot apps or something.
Yeah. Is there any cooks or formative sous chefs there that you're like?
I'd say all those guys. I remember a guy named Acha. They called him Acha because his nose was like a hatchet. Acha. I mean, these were all with the exception of myself and a guy named Tony Sekviar, who's now the chef of Protégé. It was not a kitchen of aspiring culinarians.
Okay.
It was guys who knew how to cook.
It was a pirate ship.
It was a pirate ship. Yeah. And these guys, a guy like Gacho, talk about the lessons learned in the kitchen. A guy like Gacho almost died. He had to go back to Mexico. He almost died coming over the mountains to get back in the country. Yeah. And I was a kid of some means from suburban Chicago. Yeah. And that's why, the idea of meritocracy within kitchens, the idea of it's one of the few places in the world where people of different socioeconomic and racial backgrounds can coexist well. There's very few. I've always believed that's one of the real beauties of the thing.
When you walk through the back door, it's like all classes erased. Yeah. All lines are blurred.
It's like that guy who was the sauté cook had started as a dishwasher 10 years earlier. That's still, I'd like to think that's still possible in restaurants.
Oh, for sure. It definitely is. Yeah. It definitely
that's
is.
Why I always, I've gotten in some trouble because I take umbrage with the idea that that restaurants are inherently racist places. Yeah. There's while we all agree that, at least I certainly agree that there's systemic racism at play that prohibits inclusion and access, which is the reason behind the scholarship.
Yeah.
We can talk about. I believe that there's something incredibly valuable and deeply American almost and egalitarian about restaurants.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, how long did you work there?
I worked at George's for 2 years, and then I went to France. I actually came back and worked for another year for him.
Got you. What made you go to France?
For me, it was go to culinary school or go to France. I just wanted some sense of background.
I learned classic cooking.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And it was by no means, even in that era, it still wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
There was great cooking in the U.S. There was just as much stuff starting to happen in Spain. Could have gone anywhere. But for me, like with all things, it's as much about the life experience as anything.
Now, how did you set that up? Was there visa? Was there?
There was a guy. There was a guy named Ryan who trained me at George's, who was about, in retrospect, but I hope he's not listening, but 200, he was a very large homosexual man.
Yes.
Who, I remember Trey yelling at me, the chef yelling at me to bend from my knees because I would bend from my waist, and Ryan, who was on like the meat station, was like staring at my ass and would burn shit.
Yeah.
So Trey was always like, bend from the knees because it would, so anyways, Ryan was a lovely guy. He actually ended up becoming a butcher in San Diego. He had staged at this place called L'Abbaye de Sainte Croix, which was a 1-star Orleans chateau, which isn't there anymore. And he set up that first stage, stage, which was a 6-month stage over the course of a summer, in Salon de Provence, which is obviously in Provence on this mountaintop sort of setting, really lovely. And that was my entree to France, and I was able to use the paperwork I got from that to do a few more stages during that first trip.
Yeah. Whoa. So, do you know where you wanted to work?
No.
Or were you like, I'm just going to look up the best restaurants and try to get there?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it ended up being. I mean, I had to fulfill that first 6 months, which became really difficult because the chef never changed the menu. It was that was torture. The latter 3 months of that experience were torture. I lived with a guy who was a buddy of mine named Lisandro Manuel Martinez, who was from Argentina. And we just got thrown together in this room, in this sort of dorm space that used to be like the barn of the monks.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing used to be this monk's abbey. It was really cool. Great dude. And we just we had the time of our lives.
That's awesome.
But after a few months, it was like, oh my God, I got to do something. But I couldn't get out. I couldn't get out of my deal, my stage there. So we just we drank a lot of cheap wine.
I heard that.
Endured.
Yeah. What kind of food were you doing?
It was Provençal, but it was like, there was examples of the worst part of French cooking there,
okay,
where there's a lot of artifice and maybe not as much. You see this sometimes amongst older chefs in France. Sometimes a lack of reverence of products. We'd bring in these beautiful loup de mer, break them down, and then vacuum and freeze them, or we'd bring in like pumpkins from the fall, and he'd clean them up, vacuum and freeze them, and be doing pumpkin soup in the middle of summer, like weird stuff like that. I had never seen before.
Gotcha.
I learned a lot. But it wasn't my favorite restaurant I ever worked at.
Got you. Would you say that Tres Fichet was a seasonal focused restaurant?
Highly in that, we worked very closely with a very famous farm down there called Chino Farms, and that was a big part of my education. Is I was charged with going to pick up at the farm every morning, which was it was a responsibility, it was an honor. I'm sure for Trey, he just wanted to sleep in.
Yeah.
Half hour go surfing or whatever.
And you're like, he gave me the keys to the restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I was I had been knighted.
I hear you.
And I mean, working with Tom Chino, he let me work in the field sometimes.
Yeah.
That was a very informative part of my training there.
Very cool. So then you move on from this boring restaurant, and where do you go?
I go to Paris. I moved with Lisandro to Paris, and I took a couple quick jobs. I worked at a place called Le Pied du Pont in the 6th for a little bit. I ended up landing at a place called Chez Georges, which is in the 2nd, and it's a very, very old school bistro where, again, I'm not learning crazy techniques, but I'm learning some really cool stuff.
Yeah. How are you getting jobs?
I'm
piecing together some French and Okay.
Knocking on doors. I whatever French I learned in kitchens. I just bootstrapped the hell out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just go knock on doors.
Yeah.
And I worked in this tiny little kitchen there where the garde manger guy also buffed the silver. So you'd be plating something, and then the silver tray would come out of the dish machine, and then you'd polish
That's
it.
right. That's back in the day when you had a position, you did like 3 positions.
Yeah.
The servers heated up the bread. Yeah. You know what I mean? And this guy's buffing the dishes.
I loved, and this place was where it was at the end of a street called Etienne Marcel, which is where all the fashion houses were, all the modeling agencies, all the French Vogue. So everyone who was a model, who was in fashion, who was in publishing, this was a very famous restaurant everyone would come to for lunch. the cigarette and cigar smoke was such it would just sit above your head all the way to the ceiling, and people just had like these long, boozy, sexy lunches. It was a really cool place.
That's crazy.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Yeah. And then I worked there for a few months, and then my goal was always to get into a 3-star, so I was able to get in Les Jardins de Sens, which was a 3-star Montpellier.
How much more effort did that take than your other this bistro, for example?
In terms of getting the job?
Yeah,
a
just
lot.
like getting there. Yeah. Was it a lot of standing at the back door, kind of like, hey,
it was
man?
a lot of letters, but, like any 3-star restaurant, they're like, sweet, free labor. Or,
Exactly. They don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't give for that stage, I lived behind the grease dumpster in a space that was also part of the dry storage. With like me and 3 Japanese stagiaires.
Yeah.
It was not awesome.
Gotcha. I heard that.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Me and Andre Chang were on Garde Manger together at Les Jardins de Sens. He ended up staying with the Porcel brothers for like many, many, many years.
Yeah.
I did like a 4-month stage.
Yeah.
But it was, to see a kitchen like that work. That was the first kitchen that was like, it was like the tram kitchen. It was like sliding doors. It was gorgeous. I've never seen anything like it.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Everybody's dressed nice.
It was really cool. It was cool. It was an interesting experience. A lot of yelling.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, too much.
And then I'm sure in French, and you're like, what are they saying?
It was hard. There's no doubt. My French just wasn't that good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then after that, did you feel like, what made you leave there?
It was time to come back to the U.S.
It was time to come back to the U.S. Got you. How long had you been in France at that time?
That time, not that long, like a year and change.
A year and change, yeah.
But I remember being like, I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good with.
Did you feel homesick?
No. I just, the French kitchen culture. There's a lot of dumb people.
Yeah.
It's a very slightly misogynistic, chauvinistic, kind of just like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah.
It's not a very enlightened, at the time, I would
Heard
say.
that.
It was not a very enlightened place.
So you left there and you go back to the States.
Come back to the U.S. I went back with Trey for a bit, just to kind of get my feet under me.
Yeah.
I worked for him for years. I kind of a lead cook in Tournant and just worked all the stations.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I need to get up to a city.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to make sure I get the chronology right here. So I moved up to San Francisco. I took a job at Elizabeth Daniel.
Okay.
Daniel Patterson's place.
Yeah.
Which is a great restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It was during the I want to say it was during the .com bust of. It was after that period. So let's see. I was in Provence during 9/11. I can't remember. Anyways, I remember it was a very slow restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It was not doing well, but the food is incredibly precise and very thoughtful. Daniel, is got a master palate.
Yeah,
and understands like how to make very few moves and make things delicious. I just liked more than any experience I've ever had professionally working for him.
Yeah, I
didn't enjoy it whatsoever, and that was when I was like, I think I'm done cooking.
Yeah,
because. There was like things happening in my personal life too at the time that was just like
a lot of shit at once.
A lot of shit. It was the not having the ability to pay bills. It was personal stuff happening. It was just not liking Daniel at all.
Yeah.
That I was like, but I ended up going back to France at that time for a girl I was dating at the time was French, and we moved back. Even though I said I was done forever working in France, I ended up back in France. I wasn't going to cook though. I was just going to like hang out a little bit and kind of get my feet under me. And she sold jewelry.
Yeah.
She worked with these people, these folks in Guatemala, like families in Guatemala that make jewelry. She would sell it in like these, they're called marché artisanales, like markets along the water. We lived on the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I'll sell some. I'll hang out with you. We'll like whatever. She ended up getting sick. So I had to cover for her. She ended up having like a tumor and stuff, so that got a little crazy. But in the end, I ended up back in the kitchen, a 2-star that I really enjoyed. Again, Christian Morrissey, he was very informative in terms of my career and how I look at cooking and managing kitchens. So I was there for some time.
Okay, got you. And then when did you leave France again?
So I was there for another 2 years. The second time around.
Got you.
And then. I need to get on, that point where what got me back cooking was the realization that I had put a lot of time in, that I really enjoyed the work. I knew even then my strength and my success will be with me. I need to be in charge.
Yeah.
And in understanding that, I realized I was far closer to that goal than I was from the beginning of the journey, and
yes.
the right thing to do was to get
finish.
there.
Yeah.
So, in answer to your question, coming back to the U.S. was about getting there.
Okay.
So I took a sous chef job for Daniel Hum at Campton Place. So walked in as a sous.
How did you manage that?
I think it was very fortuitous for both of us because he was a new chef in the U.S. He'd been in maybe for a year. He respected my European training. I think he really he wanted someone.
He wanted someone who had been in a hard French kitchen.
He got that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was very fortuitous for both of us. He gave me total latitude on parts of the menu, which was very helpful for me. Mm-hmm. It was a busy restaurant.
He let you be the boss you wanted to be.
The boss. Exactly. Yeah. And I don't think I did as well as I should have. I was very hot-headed.
Yeah.
I mean, like really hot-headed at the time. And that carried for several years. But he gave me like the lunch menu, and he helped work with me on guiding sort of from a vision perspective. But he gave me wide latitude to hire, to train, all of it, and that was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
The problem was he then went to New York. I didn't want to go to New York because I frankly didn't want to repeat. I don't want to say this, like the degree of poverty and absence that I had working for Patterson. I didn't want to go to New York and do that.
Yeah.
I always said to myself, I'll go to New York when I'm going to open something in New York.
Exactly.
I'm going to go to New York. So I elected not to go with him. I wasn't going to stay at Campton Place. So I took my first chef position at Chez TJ.
Chez TJ, gotcha. Who'd you take it over from?
The chef prior to me was Josh Skeens, but he had been gone for a while.
Heard that.
So there might have been someone in the
intermediate.
Yeah, for several months or something. But he had been the chef.
How long had Josh Skeens been the chef there?
Like a minute.
Okay, gotcha. And then you showed up there, and now walking in the door to this restaurant where you are now the chef of. What was your mentality? Did you have the drive? Were you like, I'm gonna get my stars?
Well, the stars weren't even they didn't even exist. Michelin was just getting there that first year.
Okay.
I mean, I was pretty focused. Let's put it lightly.
Yeah.
I was highly, highly focused and highly motivated to be successful. At a certain point, you put the time in. You know how it is. You put the time in. You put the years in. No, my thing was no one was going to stop.
Yeah, no one's going to stop this. Yeah.
I walk in the kitchen that first day, and it's like I won't even say a pirate ship because it was a pirate ship. It was like it was a joke. The guy. I see a guy with a massive big beanie on, making himself eggs on an induction burner, and this guy. I mean, it was garbage.
Yeah,
it was garbage. So I was very aggressive and very quick, flipped it around. I was lucky to come in with a guy named Chris Detmer, who was one of my cooks who I'd hired at Campton as an extern, and had worked with me at Campton. And I loved the guy to death. And he convinced his wife somehow to move down to Mountain View, which is where Chez TJ was. And together we turned that thing around.
Yeah.
And that was the first year that Michelin came out. And it was a cute little restaurant. A little dumpy. The kitchen was super, super dumpy. The dining room was dumpy. But it had charm. And I think we did really good food. The food for me at that point was definitely a little more French. It was like stuffed quail, but the quail was wrapped in bacon, and it was stuffed with truffles and oysters. It was a little more luxury, a little heavier. We got a star that first year, which was crazy time.
You got your first Michelin star.
Crazy. First year as a chef. I wasn't that young.
But you were the youngest, no, for a time.
I was the third young. Well, I was probably. I don't know. I don't know if this is still true, but I remember they say when we got 3 stars, it was like the third youngest ever.
Yeah.
In the guide, I don't know if that's. I have no idea. But we got a star that year. It was a big deal. All of a sudden, this little restaurant that was doing like 6 covers a night.
You're like crushed.
Dude, it's packed. The owner gets himself a new car. I'm seeing all this stuff happen. I'm making no money still.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, this time for me to make money now.
Well, yeah. That's fast forward year 2, we're humming, we're busy. We get 2 Michelin stars. So this is like my first year being a chef, we got 1. The second year being a chef, we got 2. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, this is when there's like the laundry had 3 stars, and there's like 3 2-stars. Mm-hmm. There was like Manresa, now Chez TJ. It wasn't as numerous as it is now, and it was a big deal.
Yeah,
that's when I'm like, hey George, I need some more money.
Yeah,
and because my bonus, as it were, for getting 2 stars was like he gave me like the company card, told me to go have a good night out. You know, and George is a great guy.
Yeah.
I mean, a great guy. I mean, he's like your uncle. He'll come and like pretend like he's pulling something from behind your ear. It's like a $20 bill, and you're like, "Thanks, George." Thank you.
Yeah, I hear you. That's so awesome.
So at that point, the restaurant in Meadowood had gotten 2 stars, and I had never heard of the restaurant.
Yeah, who was the chef of the restaurant?
A guy named Joe Humphreys, who's kind of a San Francisco journeyman, veteran, really nice.
So that's the first time you heard of Meadowood.
I never heard of it.
Yeah. Did you have any? Did you like Napa? Had you gone up there?
I'd been to Napa maybe once. Me and Daniel Hum had come up to cook something at Vineyard 29, which is just where we sit now, just half a mile down.
Did you know any other chefs up here?
I knew Chiarello.
Okay.
I didn't know him personally, but I loved Seasons in the Wine Country, the cookbook.
Yeah.
Those early cookbooks.
Yeah.
That I thought it was a great cookbook. I think that's really it. It's the only sense I had of it. I remember driving through St. Helena the first time, probably to go to Vineyard 29 for that event with Daniel.
Yeah.
And thinking it was cute. I mean, but I didn't care about where I lived.
Yeah.
It wasn't about. I would have, if the work was right and if like I could do something there. I didn't care. I never thought about life like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you. So Joe leaves the restaurant at Meadowood. This is right before the economic crash of 2008.
Yeah.
Joe leaves the restaurant at Meadowood to go take over this new hotel, Cavallo Point, in Sausalito. So the owner's wife of Chez TJ jokingly says, "Hey, it looks like Meadowood's looking for a 2-star chef." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to be right back." And I called Joe, who I knew, who put me in touch with Stan Bromley and the Meadowood people. And I was up there the next week interviewing and eating and staying and stuff.
And at that point, your mind's just like...
Well, I saw it with Meadowood. Stylistically, it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but it was a hell of a lot closer than Chez TJ was.
Hell yeah! And
it had all these other things associated with it. You had a really good functioning front of the house and a dining room that was nice and what I saw was if I could come in with the food piece, we could do something great there. I don't know if in my mind I was thinking 3 stars. I don't recall, but I remember coming up. I actually came up to eat with a buddy of mine, Blair. And I remember because we stopped at Ubuntu for lunch when Jeremy was at Ubuntu, when Jeremy Fox was at Ubuntu, and just had like this. I mean, I had known Jeremy he used to be the CDC of Monterey, so we've known each other. We knew each other for a while. I remember just having an extraordinary lunch there, having a dinner at Meadowood, and being like, I remember sitting in that room, in the dining room at Meadowood. This is when it was still like white and paisleys and ruffles, and again, not stylistically not awesome, but I remember being like, this is like a really nice restaurant.
Yeah.
Like I could do something with this.
Yeah.
So I ended up leaving Chez TJ, and
how was that break? Breaking away from that.
I like to think I love George to death, and I've told you, I tell this to people all the time. Like I think every chef deserves a Chez TJ experience. Like, an owner like that who's super supportive, who gives you that autonomy, and to do so in a place like Mountain View where you're outside of the city, so the pressure isn't crazy. Mm-hmm. Everything used to be much more city focused. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're outside the city, it was kind of like a ghost town. But outside the city enough where you have the time to get your shit together and hopefully become great, but close enough to the city that if you do so, you can make something of yourself.
Yeah.
It was a perfect dynamic. It was 5 nights a week. I lived in a double wide trailer behind the restaurant. We had no money. I would do sous vide on my stovetop in my house and wake up every hour to go check things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was crazy. It was like 1,000% all consuming.
Whoa.
But that's what it was, and that's what it took to get there. Yeah. So upon leaving, he was okay. He wasn't happy.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that we did good things for that restaurant.
Got you. And had you met Martina at this time?
No.
Already?
No, I didn't meet Martina for a few years.
Okay, got you. So you get up to Meadowood and you start being the chef there. Tell me about the first few days.
Well, the first day of service was Valentine's Day.
Oh, God.
2008. And the menu, I wasn't going to change the menu. It was literally my first day. I wasn't going to change the menu. I was just going to watch how they executed.
Yeah.
It was a set menu. And frankly, if I may be honest, I was really appalled by how things were.
Yeah.
So, of course, me decided just to change everything.
Right in the middle. Service.
Yeah, well, they were like cooking all. They were doing quail, and they were cooking all the quail ahead of service. I'm like, "What are you guys doing? Cook this to order? What do you like?" It wasn't how I tended to do things. Yeah. So, of course, it blew up service. It was horrible. It was just a disaster. And I flipped the whole staff several times. We've talked about this several times before, over the course of a couple of years before you get the right kind of team.
Who was that first shiny, bright-eyed kid that you were like, that stayed with you for a long time?
I would say, Chris Detmer came with me to Meadowood, the guy who was my sous at Chez TJ. So he came with me. I remember sitting at Martini House, which is now Goose and Gander, around the corner, writing out our first menu.
Yeah.
In like a cold winter January. I remember sitting there. So he was instrumental. Vicky Gussman, who came with me from Chez TJ as well.
Yeah.
And Travis Hunter, who came with me from Chez TJ. Travis went on to work here as a sous chef.
Yeah.
Worked at Atelier Crane. Worked at a bunch of places.
Okay.
So those were like the three core.
That came with you.
Yeah.
Now, you had another sous chef at Chez TJ who's now a very popular chef in San Francisco. Am I correct? What's her name? She has Francis.
Michaela.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if she's still cooking. She was my sous chef after Chris Detmer left.
Yeah.
Detmer's wife finally got him to move back to Upper Michigan.
She was like, "What are we doing?"
Yeah, she was. They had a kid. They were done with it. This is after they got them to move from Napa to Michigan.
Yeah.
Michaela Rayhorst was and remains the hardest working, most diligent person.
Yeah, you were telling me about her, and she's like...
She would have she had a second job. She lived in Oakland.
Yeah.
She would commute to Chez TJ and did additional work for like UCSF hospitals or something. Doing, data entry or something.
Yeah.
She was a phenomenal cook, phenomenal eater, and it's an all-around amazing person.
Yeah, and her restaurants are amazing.
Yeah, so she was the CDC at Francis.
Yeah.
And then she was at Del Popolo, and I don't know if she's cooking anymore.
Heard that.
She's great. Yeah.
And then, so you're up here at the restaurant, no matter what it's called, Tram.
Okay, so we're at Tram.
What were the first stations for you? Like as you're building this new kitchen, kind of piecing it together.
It was interesting. You're sort of walking in, as oftentimes happens. You're walking into an existing system. So at the beginning, you just sort of let that
feel it out.
Yeah, you feel it out and let that happen. But I mean, if you can, the kitchen was not great, but it was serviceable. The problem was, and no one who worked at Tram after 2011 or 12 knows any of this.
Yeah.
But the kitchen was, you shared this three-star level kitchen with on the other side of the stoves was the banquet kitchen.
Yeah.
And it was just cacophony of it was a shit.
So you're doing 300-person weddings at the same time. You're trying to do.
We are. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And this. I mean, it was really hard.
Yeah.
And I mean really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and this led to a lot of problems over the years. And this you learn this after a certain while. Is no one really understands what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You think they do
until you show them.
Exactly, until you do it.
Yeah.
You think you're using the right words, and you think you've proven something, but no one really understands where you're going, other than you.
Yeah.
Even the people who are by your side, most of them don't really get
it.
Yeah. And that was very much the case with Meadowood, where it was not built for what we did. So it was 8 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, and we bristled and we outgrew it, and that's why at a certain point we got 3 stars in that kitchen, which is just a miracle.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, our third or fourth year. So that was 2012. I think we got our 3rd star. That which one we shut down and redid the place.
Got you. So you're like, okay, I showed you now.
Yeah. Now,
please give me a new kitchen.
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay,
got
you. And what was that? How much was that build out?
I don't remember the total build out. I remember the kitchen itself was very expensive.
Yeah.
And this is $2,012, but it was a really expensive kitchen. But I mean, as you know, it was a really well done kitchen.
Yeah.
It was. I worked so diligently on that kitchen.
Yeah.
And I think the design came out well, and it was very functional.
Yeah, for sure.
It aged well. We took beautiful care of it. The team really I love that place, and that when you see the ruins of that thing, not to fast forward too much, but you see when you see the ruins of that thing, it's just hard to fathom.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So you get your 3 stars, and then sort of in a chef's career, I think that a lot of us think that 3 stars is it, and I know you are. Driven. Yeah. So after the 3 stars, where does one go from there?
Well, I mean, if I was 50 when I got 3 stars,
I'd be like, I'm done.
My approach would have maybe been different, maybe. But I was
32.
Yeah, I was 32 or something like that.
Gotcha.
So what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Other than keep pushing. And I mean, I should tell this. I mean, tell the story of when we got 3 stars, they still do these Michelin parties.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. How was that?
Dude, I went to San Francisco.
You got Thomas Keller giving you the old nookie.
First, I mean, if I can tell this story.
Yeah.
when we got the call, so I was, at this point, I'm living with my then girlfriend, now wife, Martina. We're living in St. Helena. We lived over on Hunt Street.
Yeah.
And I know this call is coming, and I feel like we got 3 stars that year.
Yeah.
We were humming. And we're walking with Charlie, my dog, who was then a puppy, through the vineyard into town to get coffee.
Yeah.
And I'm over by the end of Adams Street, over by like the library.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of cutting through the vineyard into town. And I get a call. And it's Jean-Luc Naret, and he says, Christopher, this is the last call we're making today. I want to tell you, congratulations, you got 3 stars. And listen, you can say what you want about the validity of these awards or whatever. We all poo-poo it all and understandably agree that it isn't the modus operandi. It's not the reason for being.
Yeah.
But when you put the time in and you deal with the shit that we deal with, and there is a concrete, tangible reward.
You've been knighted.
It's a big fucking deal. And it was a highlight of my life. And I'm not embarrassed to say that. Not because, it's not about necessarily somebody else's opinion. It's about, it justifies to some degree the struggles.
And all the work you've done. Yeah.
So that night is this Michelin party.
Yeah.
So we go to the city. We're at we got a room at the Four Seasons. Someone associated with Medwood was associated with the Four Seasons, and he got a room at the Four Seasons. So we're there drinking, and the party starts at 7, but it's 7:30. I'm like, I'm not going to go when the party starts.
Yeah.
My cell phone rings. It's the director of the mission. I'm like, dude, where are you? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, the party, you need to be here. So it was over at the Cliff. It was at the Cliff Hotel. So we get a cab, go to the Cliff Hotel. I couldn't find it. We're up in elevators. Finally, we find the thing. And I'm ushered into a room with Jean-Luc Naret and Thomas Keller. Because at the time, Thomas was only the 3-star.
Yeah.
And they take, in my mind's eye, in my memory, I'm walking with them, my arms were in each other. How should I say this? They're
they just hooked arms with you.
Yeah, hooked arms, exactly.
That's fucking awesome.
I walk into this room.
Yeah.
And I look around this room, and it's every chef I've ever admired. I mean, I remember seeing very clearly, I remember looking at David Kinch. I remember looking at all these people. And it was everyone's cheering. I mean, it literally was that dramatic.
Yeah.
And it was Thomas has always been very good at that, sort of putting the emphasis on me or on other people.
Yeah.
He kind of does that. And that was kind of what was happening. Him and Jean-Luc kind of walked me into this room. And I was just I'm a 32-year-old chef.
Yeah.
I'm looking at these people who are much older who I'd always, respected. And I'm, standing next to fucking Thomas Keller. And the two of us, and was the case for many years, were the only 3-star restaurants in California.
Yeah.
It was very, very dramatic, and I never forgot that.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. That is so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure the party that followed was
nuts. It was fun. It was good. It was
crazy.
Fun. Yeah.
All right. So like we were saying before, you get your 3 stars, you went to the ceremony party and everything like that. Next day, it's okay, I have 3 stars. Now you're defending them, right? Is that what you thought of, or said, I'm going to do what I do?
I've never looked at it like that.
Okay.
I mean that in all sincerity. I've never looked at it like that. Because I've always understood it as, if I keep pushing towards something I want to, if I keep doing what I believe is right, and we are pushing towards something we believe in, the rest will take care of itself.
Will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Otherwise, it's a boring life
for sure.
To maintain something.
Mm-hmm. Now, you rebuilt the restaurant, you have 3 stars. At this point, you start to see a lot more clientele, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Over the years that I worked there, I saw a lot of celebrity and all that coming in. So that must have been pretty cool for you to...
Yeah, I mean, if there's regrets I have, and I have some, it's that I always kept my head down during that time. I never used all of that to catapult myself into a different echelon of notoriety.
Yeah.
And maybe I should have.
Yeah.
And I'm still that way. I'm still I just don't do those things well. It's just not my personality. So I kept my head down, and I think we got better and better and better. But there's a limit to how big you can get simply through the quality of your work.
Yeah.
And the younger chefs get that.
Yeah.
And that's why they crush it on social. That's just not me, So... But we got busier and busier and busier.
Who were the sous chefs when you got your 3 stars?
Kim. So when Detmer left, he had been my rock. And he was only there for maybe a year and a half after upon opening. there was no one who was going to step into that role. So I promoted I promoted Pancho, who had been with me for a long time, and then I promoted a new young lady named Kim Floresca, and I made them both sort of sous chefs at the time. So over the years, we grew our sous chef corps. When we up until a few months ago, we had like really 4 or 5, and you counted Charlie and all the things we had happening. But really, at the beginning, it was one. I remember trying to convince Meadowood I needed 2 sous chefs with 3 stars. Yeah.
Now, Pancho and Kim at this point are super hungry. Like they're like, was there any animosity there, or were they just like, let's fucking band together and do this?
I'm hard to work for, as you know.
Yeah.
So I think there was enough to keep everybody busy.
Yeah, for sure.
To not start cannibalizing each other.
Yeah, I can see that. And she was your first CDC?
Yeah, then she sort of transitioned into a CDC role.
Heard that. Yeah. And then I don't know any other 3-stars that have female CDC.
Well, we've only had 4 CDCs in totality, and 3 of them have been females.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think there's any other restaurant that has that track record at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's really a conscious thing, other than I think oftentimes the potential for great management amongst women is better. I think
they're better than us, dude.
They're better.
Because when I went to the decision to work for you. It was either Atelier Cren or the restaurant at Meadowood. Right. And just because Atelier Cren had a female chef. Right. And I'm like, that's a different perspective that I could never know unless I, go under her wing or whatever. And then what drew me over to Meadowood was obviously the beauty and the food. And I had looked at all these videos all the time and was Chef Kat. It was like, oh, I have the ability to go to this place, beautiful place, get everything I ever want, and have a female there to oversee what the hell I'm doing.
That you regretted that decision.
Oh, man, no. I mean, she whooped my ass into shape, and awesome. You guys, both of you guys. But when Kat started as a cook, she came from Melise, no?
Yeah, Josiah Citron probably has a different...
You poached a couple people, huh?
Well, dude, I swear to God, and I would not say I poached anybody. I would say that they created this system of like everyone kind of knew each other. So I did an event down with Josiah for what I cannot remember for the life of me. I think it was some charities thing. I met Kat.
Yeah.
And she wanted to move up to the valley, so I hired Kat, and then right behind her was John.
Yeah.
And they swear they were not. There was nothing.
They were not dating at that time.
It was bullshit. And then after John was probably Coleman, who was really young.
Yeah.
And Howard. No, there was
Howard Coe.
Was Howard Coe?
Yeah, Howard Coe.
Yeah, Howard was at Melise, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Eloy
was at Melise.
Yep.
So we had like 5 Melise guys.
5 Melise guys there.
Which, it's a testament to Josiah, who's a great chef and runs a really rigorous kitchen.
Yeah. That
like those are the people who really thrived at.
For sure. Yeah. I would talk to Kat about her time at Melise, and she was like, just the sauce work alone was like
a tough kitchen.
Yeah, for sure.
Tough kitchen.
But she was like, that was the place where we all learned what's up, and they gave me some of that rub from that place for sure. So you name your first CDC, Chef Kat, and then
Kim.
Or Chef Kim. I'm sorry, and then later after that, sort of down the road, after Kim's kind of leaving. What do you see happening there? Like, what's going through your mind?
As time goes on, at the beginning, someone who is important to you and they leave, it's like panic.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know if I can do this without that person. What happens over time when you build up the right kinds of systems is the systems and the history of the thing guide the place.
Yeah.
They
take care of itself.
And I do not mean to say by any stretch of the imagination that anybody can step into that role and it's going to be fine. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying talent comes more easily. It's easier for people to be successful. When you're building something, you are forming it out of clay. You are forming it out of nothing. And it's really hard. And you need people who are going to run towards the bullets to do that. You need people who are just crazy.
Yeah.
And, this place is like that.
Yeah.
You know that. But in time, I don't have that panic. I feel confident with the history and the scaffolding of what we built. And you make sound, cautious, calm decisions to keep growing and evolving. So what always happened, there was always a next up. I never, ever hired a CDC from the outside.
Yeah.
the only Sue I've ever hired from the outside was Kim in 13 years. Like, it never even occurred to me.
Oh, so she got hired on as a sous.
She applied as a cook.
Okay.
And she had a great resume.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
and she's
fucking
ferocious.
Worked all over the world.
Yeah, and she's ferocious.
Yeah.
And my thinking at the time was, Poncho's been with me a while, but he's a little green. Kim has seen the world. Let's put them together.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
They can learn from each other.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
So, I forgot too. Where were we? Must have been all that pot we smoked when we were younger. So Kat becomes CDC,
right?
And then you always said there was a next up. I remember you would refer to the cold room as the bullpen,
right?
And be like, whoever, like, if somebody fell down during service, be like, who's the next guy? Let's go. Pancho leaves. At that point, I am working there.
Did you work with Pancho at all?
Yeah, I did. For like 4 months, maybe. The last thing we did was the
event at the Reserve?
No, that one was the first event, but wine auction. We did 1,200 covers of our food.
Is that where Pancho yelled across the room, across the field to Richie?
Yeah,
that one?
Yeah, that was that one. That was a lot of. There was tensions flying at that event. We did 1,200. I mean. Yeah. Look, guys out there listening, you have no idea, like, the level of perfection that Chef wanted doing 5 covers or 1,200 covers. We peeled it was like 5,500 butterball potatoes.
What was it for?
It was the sorrel potatoes.
Oh yeah.
The sorrel potatoes. So it was puree.
It's for charity. Just
yeah, this is for charity.
1,200 is for charity. Yeah. That's not for profit.
But it was insane. And I remember at some point I looked up, and there was like 400 cooks with their heads down, just everyone's just going high energy, yelling at each other. It was nuts. It was like I was so happy that I did that event, and it was crazy. But when I showed up to the restaurant, I remember talking to you. I was like, "Hey, I'm David, and I'm from this restaurant in Rhode Island, and it's a farm to table restaurant." And you're like, "I'm pretty sure every restaurant is a farm to table restaurant." And I'm like, "Damn it! Like, I fucked this up," And then you're like, "You know what? You can stay." You're like, you gave me to Howard Coe, and you're like, "If he fucks anything up, he's gone." And I'm like, oh my God. So, and at this point, I had worked really hard at these restaurants in Rhode Island, but I took a month off. I went to Puerto Rico and ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and gained 30 pounds. It's the heaviest I've ever been in my life. And I go to fucking work at your restaurant, and I'm like, I can't even get anything done. It's like, I don't even know how I got the job. But I remember that you pulled me on the walk-in, and you're like, taking a chance on you. This was the 28th of December. And
what year?
I think it's like the end of 2013.
2013, right.
The end of 2013. Because I had walked in during 12 days, and Tartine was there, and Kinch was the next day. And that's when I always tell this story. I remember looking over at David Kinch's board, and there was like $4,000 worth of black truffles that he's just chopping. And I'm just like, they just take truffles here, and they, because the restaurants I came from in Rhode Island, it was like, you slice them, and that's it. Like, you don't do anything. And here we are at this 3-star, like, you chop them and put them in the chicken jus. And I'm like, what? Just blowing my mind with all these things.
What was your impression when you first walked in the kitchen?
When I first walked in the kitchen, I was like, this is beautiful. But these fucking lights are so bright. I can't not look up. It's like, is this so we purposely just look down and work harder? Like, I don't get it.
Kitchen brighter than other
yeah, it was like a baseball field.
Right.
It was very bright. It was like boom.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the cold room, and the first thing I did for all of 12 days, and probably for the next 2 weeks, is I wrapped goat cheese balls. So I would take the chev, and I'd form it into pucks, and I would basically wrap it in apple leaves. Yeah. And I don't know if that was like my boot camp test, because I would be like freezing in there, because you're only moving your hands, so you're not and I'm like, I wore 2 shirts, and I would still be like shivering, and the guys in there would take care of me, Oscar and Armando. Right. They'd be like, where the fuck?
Bringing you hot broth.
Yeah, they'd be like, why the fuck did you move here to work in a refrigerator? Like, you're fucking dumb. And I was like, they have 3 stars, and they're like, what the fuck does that mean? And I was like, it was so funny that they worked there, but they had no idea the caliber of restaurant it was. Right. For them, they were just buffing glasses. Like, they didn't give a fuck.
Right.
And being in that room with them and Marcus Krause at the time, who was an intern, who was an ex-Marine. Yep. And I was like, the fact that this place attracts people like this, people that want to be better, that's how I knew that I was at the right place. Yeah. Especially when you had appointed sous chefs like Chef Kat, Pancho, Chef John was just becoming sous chef at that point. And
did you work with Ben?
I never worked with Ben. I think Ben had left.
Okay. You worked with Oliver, though.
I worked with Oliver. Yeah, Oliver was there at the time. Yeah. And then I remember that you would prep in the middle table,
right?
And everyone would just be terrified, just like don't do anything. Don't. I remember because when you drop shit and make huge noises, everybody would be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" They'd be like, "Oh my god, I just did," you know. But it was cool because the music was on, and that's the only thing you heard. Right. Like we spoke to each other as very library like the way we talked and everything, and I just remember feeling when I was working there that I was working towards something great.
Right. That's how I felt.
Yeah, and that I was given sort of like the old uniform from the past person, and okay, like now you have to help build this thing that is already built and almost there, but we're still finishing it. We're still chipping away. So
that's the magic of that place.
Yeah.
And, as I sort of reflect on after the thing has been destroyed, you start looking at what of it needs to continue to live. What can you allow to die? Meaning, what was the thing really about? And while from a food perspective, I think we did things that no one else did. I think we, who else really for many, many, many years operated and utilized a farm at a 3-star level like that? Not as show, but as the substantive part of what we cook.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition between what we pulled out of the dirt and the super degree of refinement that it resulted in, like how we honored vegetables, how we honored humble products. Like we did things that people didn't do.
Yeah.
Even apart from those things, what I'm left with as I sort of look back and look forward is it was a place that added more value to the lives of the people who worked there.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think everybody felt that. Mm-hmm. I mean, those who stayed felt it. I mean, some people, it wasn't for everybody.
It wasn't for everybody, sure.
But for certainly for myself and the people who put time in there, there was a feeling of not just that you were part of something bigger than ourselves, which I think I certainly felt that way, but that the simple act of doing what we did from the farm to the kitchen to the floor, we added value to our lives and secondarily to the lives of the people who ate there. That was always how I looked at it. The place was for us. The guests were, you know me, I was never out touching tables.
Yeah.
We did what we wanted to do, and we believed that if we did it right, everything else would take care of itself.
Yeah.
We created a space, and I hope to again, that has as its fundamental mission the betterment of the lives of the people who live there. Mm-hmm. I didn't always do it as well as I could. I mean, but in retrospect, that thing, irrespective of how well we applied it, is the thing that will be the cornerstone and the foundation of whatever comes next, because that is the one lasting thing.
For sure. Sort of after, and what we're referring to is the fire that that happened, took place, and took our restaurant a couple months back. But the outpour of love on social media and every avenue, newspapers. Yeah. I had Michael Passmore who raises sturgeon. He sends a weekly list of availability. He said something about it, and it was like, man, this restaurant has touched way more people than we could ever fathom. Yeah. Who's worked here, who have come to eat there, and there's nothing like eating there and working there are two different experiences, but some of the best experiences in my life. Yeah. And I never worked in a room with so many people that are so driven. Yeah. And
just a high level of person. Exactly.
It's a high level of person. And those who weren't high level people would see themselves out. It wasn't like oh, get out of here. It was like, I don't think I belong here. I'm going to move on, kind of thing. So
that's why it was always understandable to me if people are like, this isn't my thing. I was never like, I get it completely.
Yeah, for sure.
It never upset me, or why don't you like it, or blame that person. Like it is what it is. It's not for everyone.
Yeah,
it wasn't
for sure. And you don't have to play on that team. You can go work at another 3-star. It's like, that's how I look at it. I look at 3-star restaurants as like the NBA. There's just different teams. Different teams do different things. Yeah. And, you know, are there better restaurants than others? Of course. But on every other day, that may change. Yeah. You know, and that restaurant that was bad one day may be better than that restaurant that was good that day. Yeah. So I think that's the beauty of what we do.
Talking about the outpouring of support. I mean, you know, was pretty close to the thing for a long time, and I don't think you were really cognizant. I was not really cognizant of how it was perceived. You know, we operate in a tiny town. I'm not on the global tour. I never cracked the top 50. Mm-hmm. We always did our thing. I believe very strongly in what we did, but I never really understood how it was perceived by others. And I think the takeaway was that there was a lot of respect for the restaurant, mm-hmm. and I think for how we went about our business. You know, I think that was really surprising to me, very gratifying. I hope to the team over all the years, and something that really led me to want to consider doing it all over again.
For sure. And then now, before all of this, obviously you had thought of opening a restaurant like this, the Charter Oak. Was that always a dream of yours? Did that enter your life early? Was it something you always thought about, or was it kind of like, you know what, I did it for the 3 stars, I got everything, we're good, let me create another?
It's almost the other way in that I never wanted to do fine dining. Mm-hmm. I remember telling Daniel Helm this at Camp Place. I'm like, I wanted to do a place where you grilled meats. There's a place in Antibes in the south of France where I lived called Le Brûlot, which is like grilled meats and like salads, like really hyper simple, really well executed. I always wanted to do that. I never wanted to do fine dining. I sort of fell backwards into fine dining. I think because I love the people who work in that space.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
The drive.
But I'm not if you know me, like, I'm not a fine dining guy.
Yeah.
I think people who don't know me or the world in which we inhabit put me in this sort of world of people that I don't really belong in.
Yeah. He likes to eat like this. It's like, no, we like to eat craft.
This is the worldview of a person like that.
Yeah, no.
And it's just not how it is.
It's usually the way it is for everybody in a 3-star. They're like, oh, he must eat this at home. Yeah. It's like, no, I eat cereal and then, you know.
I mean, I saw some of that after the fire, like this, you know, there was as much positive press as there was like, you know, people who were like, I hated working there.
Yeah, for sure.
I totally get. But I think a lot of that sort of coverage is guided by a preconceived idea of what people, like, of who I am. Yeah. Which I think is way off base.
For sure.
But yeah, you know, I don't know if I ever said to myself I want to open a massive live fire restaurant. I don't know if I was ever that specific about it, but I knew I wanted to do something that was not 3-star, mm-hmm. that my kids could come to, that was just a little more street level. And this building, where we sit, the Charter Oak, became available. I never envisioned doing something this large. Yeah. And that, as you know, that carries with it certain opportunities and certain challenges. So we've been able, as you know, to like really make the place successful, even in these really trying times, mm-hmm. Thanks to you and the team. So I think the future is bright here. The future is bright, but it certainly has been a very, very, very hard, 3+ years.
For sure. Yeah. So when you were planning that, when was it planned, basically? Because we knew nothing, right? We were just working at the restaurant.
I'll tell you, I remember the deal for this was signed in August of 2015. So we probably began conversations, the way things work in this world, probably 2014. Yeah. So this is 7 years ago. Everything about this place is big and hard.
Yeah. Did you envision Chef Kat as the chef always, or did that kind of come into play later?
I think it was a question of timing. I think it was time for Kat to do something else. I think. But it was always the intention that the team would be really tethered to the team at the restaurant.
Oh, for sure. And
it would provide opportunities for people coming from there.
Yeah. So I remember, during the switch, it's like she was R&Ding in the Tram kitchen. I was still on Meat Station, I think, and then Chef John had taken over as CDC for her. Right. And then, you guys got the space. I remember you walked us through it when they were like before they had started building it out, and it was all the ruins.
Yeah.
And
Cool. It's a cool space.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's got a lot of stuff.
I was sitting on the terrace last night just looking at the it's a one of a kind building. It's really special.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then what was I going to say? So when you were conceptualizing Charter Oak, did you know that this was the food that you wanted to do? Like, did you know that you wanted to have a fucking awesome burger and beef ribs and chicken with a little sauce on it? And like,
I think I wanted. We pivoted and evolved a lot based on what what the problem with Charter Oak at the beginning is you had a bunch of 3-star guys trying to postulate what a casual restaurant looked like.
Yeah,
and I think what our perception of what it should be at the onset was just a little off.
Yeah.
And there was definitely two different ways of looking at it. The way I looked at it, the way my partner at the time looked at it in front of the house, where it was too fancy. There was too much fancy stuff.
Yeah.
Like the burger was always meant to be like, oh, it's going to be off menu, but now it's like the best selling thing.
Yeah,
you realize what people. This is retail.
Yeah.
This is give the people what they want. Tram is we're going to do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah,
and people come.
And if you want to, you choose to come there,
or you don't.
Exactly.
Here is like, it's retail. You got to respond to your audience, and we deal with this all the time. Like, you're talking about your PMix. What's going to sell and what's not going to sell?
What are we not selling?
Yeah.
What do we got to move?
Yeah.
And that's a crazy world, that you have no idea about when you're at a 3-star as a cook. Or a sous chef. Like, you don't deal with cost. It's like, oh, hey, get the 2 kilos of caviar. No problem. Right. And you're
because
like, cool.
Because you have enough revenue. That it all works.
That's like $300 a person. It's like here. It's like
that's what I like about. I like the challenge of engineering here. Engineering the menu, engineering the dishes in such a way to enable you to do the covers. Like, I really enjoy that, and I found in this process that I really like the idea of being as much, if not more, a restaurateur, and focusing on the vision and letting the chefs be the chefs. Like I'm still. It's hard for me. That's the first time I've said that out loud. But I think that is what is to me more interesting and makes more sense with the life that I'm leading as a husband and a father.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's felt here. I was, like for you to say, hey, do you want to be the chef after Kat leaves? I was like, excuse me, you know what I mean? Like, because you're like, you think about all the things you've done and have, and it's like the logical first step. At the time, I didn't think it was so. I was like, I don't think, no, man.
Why was it? What did you want to do?
I think at that point, I was like, why would I do this 3-star training and then go fry French fries? Right. But then I sort of started to look at it with more of, you don't have to be on this trajectory like everyone else. Because like before then, what did the chefs do? They work here. They worked at a 1-star, they work at a 2-star, they work at a 3-star, and then they go open their own restaurant. Right. And you framed it to me like there's a whole nother side of this business that you don't know. Right. And, I was like, okay, took it, and I came here, and I quickly realized what you had been telling me. Yeah. That it's not as easy to train people here as it is at Tram, right? People move across the country to go work there, and here it's more or less, you have some of that, but then you have some people that are just here for a job, and you need to understand that as a chef, that not everybody wants to run 1,000,000 miles an hour and do everything how you do it, so I think I learned a lot about leadership while I was here, and learned a lot about food costs and just those things that you don't touch at 3-stars. And I think that's valuable for people, just as it is valuable working at a fast food place or a place that may not be that high caliber before you go to a 3-star restaurant.
I couldn't agree more. People don't talk about that, but everyone's trying to be a poet and believes that you have to work at all these specific kinds of places to be a great chef. You need to go work at a George's at the Cove. Yeah. Which is, a great restaurant, but again, a restaurants where you just learn how to bang.
Yeah, you learn how to cook.
You learn how to cook. You learn how to be tough.
Yeah.
You learn how to
thicken your skin a little bit.
Yeah, thicken your skin. Yeah. Learn how to not take shit from your peers.
Exactly.
How to
that's a strong part of it, because even when I got to Tram, there was some cooks there. I remember Richie. He was looking at me like, this motherfucker's coming for my job. Like I remember the look on his face, and I was like, oh no, this guy hates me. And
Richie's his famous quote, he was doing something where the abalone was getting miscounted during an event, and he slams his hand on the table. He's like, "My job is on the line."
I remember that we were doing an event. It was like a canapé event or something, and we were at different tables. And I was kind of like, "Hey, throw me that pastry bag," and he walks it over. And I'm like, "You could have just thrown it to me." He's like, "There's too much at stake." I was like, "That's Richie, man." But that's how cool that place was, because as soon as you walked in there, all your life's problems forgotten. Because all you cared about is being as perfect as you could be, But what after that, Charter Oak, open 3 years now. Where does Ensue come in all of this?
It's interesting. You what did they say? They say, as you're making decisions in life, you're just doing so based on what's coming at you. But when you look back on it, it looks like a perfectly created novel.
Yeah, exactly.
It all has a sense to it. So, I think at the time, I've wanted to do a multitude of different projects. As I said, I think that's really interesting. It's exciting. I like the idea of creating this massive ecosystem, where the farm informs these different restaurants, and the team in the restaurants that can then do other things. That's really fun. When that's humming, which is where we were getting, right?
We were getting right before pandemic,
Where all the chefs were looking at recipes of different. You had a chef in China and a chef at a casual place.
Yeah.
And everyone's sort of working. I think that's so fun.
Yeah,
I really do. And I think it comes down to why we get into this business at all, which is that connection with the people that we work with.
Yeah.
So to grow that world is super attractive to me. So the opportunity came, Ricky Lee, who's from out of Shenzhen, which is in mainland China, had these ambitions to do this restaurant in China. He's a very well-traveled, well-known sort of foodie. And somehow I was chosen to do it. He enlisted Brian and Mark Canlis of Canlis Restaurant to put this search together globally for the chef who he believed could come in and raise the bar for them.
Did you have to do a dinner for it or something?
They came in to eat a few times.
Okay, gotcha.
I always remember this. I don't know if I've ever told Ricky this story, but it was like a Thursday night, 9:30. There was a four-top on table 9. It was the owner of the Miami Heat. I want to say it's not Adelson. It's I can't remember his name. So he's there with his family, and then these two young Chinese kids come in wearing sweatpants or something. And I'm like, I'm going home. I'm done for the night, whatever. And the Chinese kids were up at the table talking to the guy from the Miami Heat, and then we were trying to manage the situation or whatever. Those two guys, that was Ricky and Edward, who's his partner in the thing, and Ricky's a huge Miami Heat fan. Randomly enough. But anyways, the point being, they came in a couple times and ate, and we talked a lot. I flew out there. I was actually in Hong Kong anyways doing something, a dinner at the Jockey Club there. And it just worked. And we were able to open in Sioux of August of last year. And, to our earlier conversation, Miles, who was a sous chef at Tram, came here
for a little bit
to help open it.
Yeah. And then he went off and did some stuff, and then he came back.
Yeah. Then he went back to Canada. Yeah. He became the chef, and he has done just a great job.
He is so talented.
Dude, he's a jack of all trades. Yeah, so that's why I really thought that was a perfect fit for him, because it's a bit Wild West out there in terms of you might not be able to get the flour that there's nothing.
Yeah.
You got to know how to figure it out.
Yeah, know how to figure it out. Yeah.
And he's to your point, incredibly talented. And he's doing a great job and really evolving the vision there. Because we went in saying we're going to do Tram meets Southern China, but the food at Tram is pretty esoteric and austere, and it's like one little thing on a plate, and that just doesn't fly there.
Yeah.
So we've been, he's done a really good job of understanding the local audience in a degree that I haven't been able to, because I haven't been able to get there because of COVID.
Yeah.
So he's crushing it. So yeah, and Sue's been a really wonderful project, and my plan this year was to spend a lot of time in China understanding the place and people better, and hopefully we can do that whenever this shit show ends.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So do you have a part in the food over there, or is it mainly gotcha?
Yeah. Yes. So me and Miles talk every week. We talk about the menu. We had some really big plans coming for this year, some really big guest chef things and stuff.
Yeah.
But so we work on
Are they closed over there?
No, they're open. They're
open full on busy.
They're doing great. Yeah.
Boom. Yeah. China, good job taking care of COVID.
Yeah.
Thank you for introducing it and then slowing the curb.
Yeah.
Making us look like fools.
Yeah. We do that by ourselves.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, Chef,
That's it.
that's it.
Do I get questions?
Yeah, you guys have good. Yeah.
So it's today's your last day.
Today's my last day at the Charter Oak. Yes.
And in addition to being your last day at the Charter Oak, it's your last. When did you start? You said at Trim.
2013,
so
December 28th.
So 7 years.
7 years.
So 7 years. This is your last day.
Last day.
So how do you
7
feel?
years. I feel incredibly blessed. I feel lucky that you guys accepted me. Because I knew, as you grow in your company, you know that you take your sous chef's advice seriously. They're your consiglieres. Like, they fucking let you know, like, this guy's no good or this guy's good. And I think that Chef Kat and Chef John and even Oliver at that time were like, yeah, let's take a chance on this kid, you know? And I think you did as well. And just the fact that I showed up at the back door was, you know, I always think if you're going to get a job, you got to fucking make a statement. And that was what I had to do. You know, I didn't want to become just another resume in the stack that I'm sure you have to this day, you know. So I was like, how can I do that? And that's old school. Nobody does that anymore.
I used to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like you told me, like when I walked in, you were like, there's a culinary school right down the road and not one person has ever done this. Ever. And to this day, I don't think has, you know, again, you know. So I think that's something important for everyone out there. Like, I wasn't necessarily thinking that I was worthy of working at the restaurant, skill-wise or whatever. But if you don't take a chance on yourself, then you never know what the fuck can happen, you know. And if you will it, it will happen. Yeah. So
I mean, I applaud that, and and I've been doing this for a long time. I think that you, from day one to the last day to today, have a certain spirit and a degree of self-confidence isn't enough. It's self-belief. Mm-hmm. That I know, as sure as we're sitting here, that whatever you want to do, you're going to be able to do. Coupled with the fact that your trajectory, how should I say this? The more life experience you have, the more things you see, the more things you do, the better you get. Mm-hmm. That is not how it works for most people in my experience. Meaning, people are who they are. We're a bit calcified. Yeah. We're stuck in sort of our own little bubbles over our heads, and that's what it is. I think you have such a degree of upside and potential owing to your self-belief, but owing to your innate curiosity, and sort of you live with your eyes and ears really open. And I think, and I know that so much success is gonna befall you. Yeah. And I appreciate so much all this time. I mean, again, man, even to the last day, the way you finished at this restaurant, it's very rare. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And when you look back on all this, I really hope that you do so with a tremendous amount of pride.
Oh, for sure.
And that I and the restaurant and the people in it were able to make your life better for the time you were here.
Honestly, it is probably the greatest experience of my life. And I've had great experiences working for chefs, and I wouldn't be able to do it without Chef Jake Rojas. He definitely upped the ante on how aggressive you can be formed, which helped me then be in that kitchen and survive with all those guys that wanted to be great. And now look, Chef Miles is and Sue and Chef Kat has got Yangban Society down in L.A. And the testament is all there. Everyone who has worked for you has a level of success that was much more than when they started. And
but my success is because of those people as well. Meaning, I'm very cognizant of that. Like, there's a lot of conversations in the industry about credit and things like that. And while I'm nothing, and that restaurant's nothing without all of you. And
exactly.
I don't mean that as some bullshit hyperbole, like a nice thing, a Hallmark card thing to say.
Yeah. I
mean, genuinely, from a content creation to culture to attitude to just human capital, that restaurant doesn't exist without all these people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to thank you, Chef. I want to thank every single person that I've crossed paths with at the restaurant at Meadowood, and Sue at Charter Oak. Anybody that I've ever met through you has become a great friend in my life, to be honest. Like the fact that I have these chefs' phone numbers in my phone and I can call them is all because of you. Doing potlucks and thank you for that. Guest chef events is possibly the greatest thing that I've ever been introduced to in a world when I came to work at the restaurant.
We were at
it was
the
like
forefront of
it was like 12 days. You know, brigade dinner with Dan Giusti, a bunch of other events. It's like almost like, you know, you'd be sitting at home like, you know, I'm bored. Let's do the fucking event next week. And I will always remember the event we did in North Carolina when me, you, and Chef John went over there. And I got to tell this story. So we roll into this restaurant. It's Pool's Diner.
Pool's Diner.
Chef Ashley Christensen, amazing chef, badass lady.
Yeah, great lady.
And we go to this Pool's Diner. It's like, I don't really know Chef that well. I don't know Chef John that well. Like, I've just been working maybe for 8 months at that point. And I'm like, okay, they're taking a big chance on me. This is it. And we're working at this Pool's Diner. Chef John is basically doing everything, and I'm just like doing the canapes and like going down on that. So we do the event. And that was a good feeling because, you know, everything went off without a hitch. And it's hard to try to do 3-star food, especially at Pool's Diner. That kitchen was tiny. We were grilling outside in the rain. It kept raining on the coals. It was like, you know, there's always these things. And I would say Chef John is the greatest person at an event to just make shit happen when you got all the elements are against you.
So much fun.
You know?
I've had so many fun times with him.
Yeah, man. I mean, you guys traveled the world and cooked together, and
all over, man.
That guy is just fucking MacGyver when it comes to shit. Like, he just makes it happen.
Hong Kong, where's Massimo's place? Me and him
in
Modena.
Modena, yeah. A lot of memories. We go there, we do the event. And, like, at this point, you get behind the bar, elbow the bartender out of the way. You start pouring us whiskey shots. We get fucked up. And then we're like, all right, we're going to go to the bar. What do? We all pile in the back of a pickup truck bed. And we're in North Carolina. So I'm like, yeah, this is legal here, right? Like, we're in the South, right? Like, whatever. So me, you, and Chef John are in the back. Then we get pulled over down the road. And I'm like, Chef, give me your beer. And I fucking hide it with some jackets or whatever. The cop's like, get the fuck out of there. So we, you know, hop out of the back of the truck. Ashley Christensen is like, I own this town. The fuck,
who I am?
Yelling at the cops. I was like, this is amazing, man. White people get uppity with the police. And then, you know, we roll to the bar, but the person who drove us to the bar got a DUI. Yeah. Later on, her significant other ended up getting some.
I want to see how you're going to tell. I want to see how you're going to tell the story.
He was getting some fellatio in the street. In the street. Yeah, no, I'm going to go right on and say. I said fellatio. It's okay. And John got his hair braided at the bar. So we were just out of sorts.
I don't know how I got home that night. I wasn't with you guys.
Yeah, there was a lot of not remembering how we got to back to our hotel rooms during that trip. Yeah. But I remember my first day back, coming back off the plane. And went down on canapes super hard. And Chef Cat's like, you better be ready to party hard and then come and work harder. And I was like, damn. Like, you know, schooled by the best.
Those events were I love doing those events.
Yeah.
Especially when I was younger, like where I could hang a little bit more and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Those events those are real crucibles. Those are real tests to the point because we go out and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also how well can you function in not your environment.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And you were always like, we fly out Friday, do the event Saturday, fly back Sunday, work Sunday night. Like, it was always like you're coming back to service. So
that's how we even did it with China. I mean,
for sure. Yeah, that's right.
I'd leave work, go to the airport, fly to China, do the thing, come back.
But that's cool, man. I think I saw you at a certain point before this pandemic hit your stride with that.
Yeah.
Like, I think you liked being in other places, and it kind of, you know, let me change things here a little bit and let me kind of be on my own, you know, and then you'd come back and I'd be like, okay, well, how do I do with this, this, and this?
That's how it needs to be. And as I said, that's the fun ecosystem we can build. I love that.
Yeah,
I really do.
For sure. I mean, the communication of the Restaurant on Meadowood team and the Charter Oak team will always continue. Yeah. I always talk to everyone that I've worked with. Even Carl the other day, you know, I talked to him.
Shout out to Carl.
So yeah, shout out to Carl. Neatest prep list in history of cooking. Nah. All right, but you know, this is bittersweet for me. But like you said, I'm very driven, and everything that I've ever done in this past 7 years working for you has been like something that I've said. Like when I was gonna work for you, I fucking, it's called the Ocean Drive Blunt Cruise. It's the best blunt cruise in America, rated by High Times, and
I don't even know what a blunt cruise is.
It's in Newport, Rhode Island. So it's basically like, you go smoke on this cruise. I rode a bike and I smoked, which was terrible. It was hot. I'm sitting on this rock looking at the water like, you're going to go work at the restaurant on Meadowwood, and in 3 years you're going to be sous chef. And that's like exactly what happened, awesome. Word for word. So thank you. Thank everyone. And this has been an incredible episode of Sucio Talk. Awesome. There will be more episodes to follow, but this Chef Christopher Kostow.
None of them is good, though.
Hell no. That's Chef Christopher Kostow, episode number Who Gives a Fuck. Tune in next week where we'll have Andrew D'Angelo, CEO of Harborside. That's that dispensary down in Oakland. But I do have that wrong. He's not the CEO anymore. So I fucked that up, but it's okay. I'll edit it out. All right? Signing off.